Hello everyone, I am Chris, and I'm joined once again with Dale. It has been a good few weeks since we last did this thing. We were getting in a routine with it, with the 100 Years of Wonder retrospective, and then fate, the universe, whatever you believe in, just didn't want us to do this review on Saludos Amigos. You wouldn't believe the amount of hoops we've had to jump through to get to this review today. As you're watching this right now, obviously this will be going live on, well, it won't be going live, but it will be out there for people to watch on Monday. Hopefully you're watching it right now, and hopefully you're having a great time. We are actually pre-recording this the Saturday before, so 2 days prior. Dude, we have tried. We have tried to get this working. My Mac died a death. It was just over warranty, which was really annoying. Yeah, then you died a death. I don't know if you had the coof, you had the flu, something like that. My computer died again, a second time. Thankfully, this thing's like Frankenstein. It's just being pieced together, patched together, and a bolt of lightning, and it gets it going. So it's working for right now, and that's the main thing. So hi everyone, welcome back to the 100 Years of Wonder retrospective. In case you're new here, it's probably a good jumping off point. But do go and watch our previous 5. We're up to number 6 right now. We are talking about... I wanted to come back with a bang for this. We've had 2 weeks off, and I'm like, yeah, out of the gate, let's get talking about this really exciting Disney movie. And that really exciting Disney movie is... Saludos Amigos. Which is like 42 minutes, and no one's really heard of it, and I don't even know how many people have watched this thing. I only watched this thing fairly recently. But yeah, we're up to number 6. For anyone who doesn't know, every single week, provided that a computer doesn't die on us and you're not dying of an illness, we will be here every Monday talking about every single one of the numbered Disney classics. We're still in single digits at the moment, so we've got a long, long way to go. There's a lot of Disney animated classics, but we're having a great time with this. There'll be behind-the-scenes information about it and just our general opinions on it, which takes me very nicely over to you. We usually start off with this. Our first time watching this film. Have you watched this in the past, or are you fairly new to this like I am?
The first time was the day before we were meant to do this.
Right.
Because I wanted to be fresh to it. And I'd never seen it before. Like, I'd seen a couple of these, I say these weird ones, like you group Fun and Fancy Free, Make My Music, all that kind of stuff. I kind of group them together. I'd seen Fun and Fancy Free, a couple of them. This, just never seen before, so I watched it very, very fresh-faced. It was enjoyable to an extent. But then it was very, why is this a movie? That's what I thought afterwards. Not just because it's 42 minutes, but the whole thing is literally a best of album without being best of. You know what I mean? It's literally just stitching a couple of cartoons together and going, well, fuck it, we'll make a movie out of it. We might as well. We need to make one. That's how it felt to me.
And yeah, that's exactly what it is, really.
Yeah, and because it was obviously World War II era, that's kind of what they had to do. They had limited writers, limited staff. They couldn't do much, so I understand why it happened. But going back now, with all the numbered classics being how many there are, it feels like it shouldn't be a Disney classic. It feels like, okay, it was a movie, cool, but no one's going to remember it.
Yeah, and I mean, this goes hand in hand with the one that we'll be talking about next week, which is the Three Caballeros. Saludos Amigos and this movie are kind of like a companion piece, almost like a double feature, and they were made purely, well, for exactly the same reason as each other. It's a propaganda film, and I'm totally in agreement with you. I thought this was an animated feature. It's not listed as that. It's listed actually as a live-action / animated propaganda anthology film. I guess you could probably call it a featurette, but it's not sort of like a feature. I actually don't know what defines a feature. Does it have to clock in over an hour? I'm not actually sure what makes an animated feature. Yeah, so Saludos Amigos, this is one that I've been aware of for a long time. Growing up with the Disney films and collecting them on video, I was always kind of aware of the numbered list, to the point where I'd almost memorized the list from memory. I could just list it off one by one. And this film was so damn hard to find on VHS. This was like a gold mine trying to find Saludos Amigos. I managed to find Three Caballeros one time in like a secondhand video store, but I never managed to find this. And when I did, much, much later on in the game, it was very expensive. Looking back on it now, films were probably like dirt cheap, but back then, that's how inflation works. it was really expensive. And you turn the cover over and you look on the back and you see that it's 42 minutes, and it's like, do I buy this Disney film for the same amount of money that's like an hour and a half, or do I buy Saludos Amigos literally just to have it in my collection and it's 42 minutes? Long story short, I never got round to getting this on video, and it's still one of the ones that eluded me. Obviously, I bought it when I bought my whole collection on DVD, but I've never got round to watching it. So that's what's quite exciting about this retrospective, is that we will see Disney films actually in a couple of weeks' time that I've never watched before. There are a few on the list that I haven't seen, and this was one of them. The good, like, couple of months ago now, whenever it was, when I was dying of the coof, of COVID, potential COVID, I probably did have it. This was the last one that I watched when I kind of watched all of them in a row kind of thing, just to help me stay sane and not slip slowly into madness and death. And it's kind of what I expected it to be. It's a quick sit, although I will say that 42 minutes, it did feel every single one of those minutes to me. I did keep checking the runtime, like, okay, let's wrap this shit up now. But it's kind of similar in ways to, I can't believe I'm comparing this film to one of the greatest animated films of all time. Similar to Fantasia in a way, where it's just the segments.
There's no overarching like story.
Yeah,
the thing is, it is similar to Fantasia. Like it is, it's. But the thing is, Fantasia is doing that right. The difference is, this is kind of your knockoff Fantasia. It's like a company doing it, but like they just had to get a movie out. That's how it felt. It felt like you had to get a movie out, because if they didn't, why would they have done it? And why would they have made it a movie? You would have made it a standalone, just kind of, you did something. But then again, because of when it came out, it's not like you could do a straight to video release, because videos weren't a thing then. So it also makes sense the way it was done. But I just think if it was anything else nowadays, it would have just been a quick short on Disney Plus or something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The most fascinating thing about this film to me is reading about the behind the scenes for it, and why it was conjured in the first place to be an idea. Well, first off, we talked about the segments. It's made up of 4 different segments, and it includes Donald Duck, who's, if I had to, what do you call it, like the main Disney lineup? I don't know what you call it. What do you call that group of Disney characters, like Mickey and Pluto and Donald and Goofy?
Mickey, Pluto, Donald, Goofy.
Do they have a collective name? I actually don't know. Is it the Disney family, or I don't know what you'd call them. But your main Disney characters, right? When you think of Disney, Donald's always my favorite.
Kind of like when you think of rock music and you think of Van Halen, and and you think of like Led Zeppelin, it's you kind of they're the people that you think of, and it's that. But yeah, I don't know what you call them, but they're kind of. Do you ever see the Final Fantasy movie that they did years ago?
Spirits Within, was it called? Yeah, back in the day.
Idea. I mean, it was crap, but the idea behind it was the main girl was supposed to be, from what I remember, like an animated actress. Like they're supposed to use her in something else, then use her in something else and dress her up. And it's kind of like that. The Disney characters similar. Like you got Mickey Mouse will play a character somewhere else, and you got Goofy will play a character somewhere else. It's kind of like the Warner Brothers lot, like with Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, all that kind of stuff.
I just realised this background. If I line my shoulder up with the poncho and kind of raise up a little bit, I'm kind of like, hey, look at that! I'm kind of in line with Goofy. I get my arm. There we go. Look at that. And then you've got to like match Donald or something. I don't know. Get creative.
I wish I could see, but I can't see it.
Oh, of course you can't. Okay, well, for the viewing public at home, that was a glorious moment, I'm sure. But yeah, Donald Duck is it's always been my favourite. I think his temperament is just hilarious, and he just seems like he's got way more personality. And like Mickey's just like, oh, is the goody two shoes Mickey, and I know some people like Goofy, but sometimes he just gets on my tits a little bit and just annoys me. But Donald is always straight up. Maybe it could be like DuckTales and stuff like that I used to watch back in the day. Maybe that's like added to the reason that I love his stuff. So you've got one with Donald. Actually, you've got 2 with Donald. He begins and ends it. You've got a little animated short about Pedro, who's an aeroplane, who's delivering mail. And then there's a segment with Goofy, which outstays its welcome for quite a considerable while. And I think we'll both be in an agreement there when we get to that, when we talk about it in the review. But it does introduce a new character as well. Yosei Karaoke, I believe is how you pronounce his name. I am going to butcher.
Green dude.
Yeah, the green parrot, the cigar-smoking parrot, who is in this movie as well. Three Caballeros, he will return in that, and I actually don't know if he's cropped up before. I think probably out of these two movies, he's the most memorable thing. And like, if you say to someone like, "Oh, do you know the Disney character Jose Carioca?" They'll be like, "What?" Like, most people won't even know who he is. But I think if you are going to draw anything out of this film and the next one, it's probably him, who's vaguely recognizable, maybe in some kind of weird grey matter in the back of your brain somewhere that you may have seen him around. But I don't know if he's like big in merchandise or something like that, or if in Latin America he is like a really prominent character in that realm of Disney. I'm not really sure. But yeah, this was fascinating reading about how this came to be. So this film was brought about and was commissioned by the US Department of State as part of something called the Good Neighbor Policy. Now, I didn't know really much about this policy at all, and I clicked it on Wikipedia and it takes you to a whole massive fucking essay and article, and I didn't have time to read it all. But essentially it was to curry favor with Latin America, and it was like a good neighbor thing, you know. Oh, we'll do some cool stuff for you, you do some cool stuff for us, and we'll be like best pals, right? We're totally not enemies or anything like that. But if you look into it deeper, this is like really like full-on American propaganda and things like that. It's crazy to look at. Yeah, so it was done to promote goodwill with Latin America, but at the time, this was in like early 1941, before the US got involved in World War II. Around about this time, there were a number of Latin American governments that had close ties to Nazi Germany. So they swooped in and thought, let's penetrate them at their most weakest spot. Let's get a Disney movie made, because everyone loves Disney. And it makes us all feel good. So let's say, like, hey, we'll release a movie over there. We'll work in conjunction with you. We're going to, release it in Central America. We're going to do it in, South America and things like that. And it'll all be okay. Please don't join the Nazi party. Keep on the good side, yeah? Keep on the good guys. It kind of came about from that. I had no idea. I know that it was to try and drum up business, I guess, in like Mexico and places like that. I was aware of that. But I didn't know the lengths it went to and how it tied into World War II and international politics and things like that. It's kind of cool.
It was the first Disney movie to be to premiere outside the States, though, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, you may be right about that. Actually, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because it premiered in Brazil, and it was the first one that ever did it. And I think, because obviously, like you say, it was supposed to go over there, and the fact that it was the first to premiere over there is, like you say, that kind of just like, this is not your, well, yeah, kind of like, this is your movie, this is the movie for you guys. It was quite like that, and the good thing is, but back then they could, maybe they didn't even really poke fun, but the way they could have the caricatures of talking about the llamas, all that kind of stuff like they did in it, was great. And I don't think, I mean, obviously nowadays you can't poke fun at anything, but it wasn't even poking fun at it. But like nowadays you got to be so careful. I don't know why, but you know what I mean, you got to be so careful of what you say, whereas then it was like, this is a movie for you guys, and it was portrayed in such a, like, American people watching it did actually learn something about South America, whereas now it would be considered kind of, oh, you can't say that. Well, I don't know why, but I think it's done very well in that sense, and it is a good kids movie. If I watched it when I was a child, it's good, but it's not memorable. I don't think there's a single part about it that's memorable. I think the first segment is very good, the first segment of Donald Duck.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
I don't think it's a memorable movie overall.
Yeah, no, I'll agree. I think, well, obviously growing up, I watched the Three Caballeros more in the fact that I actually owned that on VHS and I didn't own this one, and I only watched it recently, so of course it's fresher in my mind. But I think it is long. Three Caballeros is longer. I think it's like 70 minutes or something like that, so it's about half hour longer. But to me, there's a musical number in there that stayed with me, which this film doesn't really have. There's like a dance number at the end, but there's actually a song called The Three Caballeros, which is,
yeah, they do memorable. Have Saludos Amigos, like a theme. Which they did play at the beginning, which I was not surprised about, but I was kind of like, oh, okay. And then in my head, all that had was the Three Caballeros theme, and I was like, this is weird.
Yeah.
It was one of those that I feel like this is kind of a prototype for Three Caballeros, where when they brought that out, they went, this is actually a proper movie. Whereas this is your kind of...
Yeah, the success of this one helped that film get made, so... As lukewarm as I am on this film, maybe I don't even know if I'd go so far as negative. I'm just kind of ambivalent towards this movie, I'd say. Apathetic. I don't know if apathetic's a better word. But yeah, the success. This was a success in many ways. It helped already at this point. Mickey Mouse was quite popular in Latin America already, and they wanted to franchise some of their other characters out there as well, like Goofy and Donald. So this helped the popularity of Donald Duck over there too. And yeah, getting government funding for the next movie. It's insane that the government funded this film. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. But at the time, Disney really wasn't doing great. And it's interesting doing this retrospective to see just how quickly that company could have gone under right from the off. You know, they were going over budget on things. They were really, what's it called? What do you call it when you try and expand? Overexpanded? That's not a word. But they were trying to do too much with the company at the time. And then World War II hit, and they couldn't get their market out to Europe, so they were losing loads of cash, just, you know, hand over fist, just constantly. And there was strikes going on at the time within Disney. A lot of the animators were turning their back on them, and there was unrest within the company itself. So it's absolutely crazy. You had all of this stuff going on, and then the government stepped in because it was all about propaganda. They wanted to get this made in line with Disney, and I think it was Nelson Rockefeller, I think his name was, who was like the inter-American affairs guy. Someone who knows more about politics than me will just be like, this guy is just terrible explaining all of this stuff. But I don't really do politics. It's quite involved.
But the thing about this is that, you know, as much as I don't think there's a lot of me that just doesn't think it should exist, because not doesn't think the movie should exist, but it shouldn't be a Disney classic. But a lot about it is, I feel like if it didn't, and let's say the World War II era, they just didn't pump out movies, would Disney still be as big? Because it's one of those things of, if you stop, people will forget about you. And I know World War II was going on, but if they had come back then, you know, the government wouldn't have been out there to fund it. You know, people would have lost interest here and there. They would have had to work, but instead they just kept going.
Yeah.
Which, there's a lot, really.
I guess it's like bands, isn't it, as well, that, you know, when they're starting out, you need to keep those albums coming, you need to keep getting on the tour racket, people need to be talking about you, need to know your name, need to recognize your iconography and everything like that. If you dip out when you just start and you're gone for 5-10 years, like, no one's going to remember you. It's once you've made it big, you then have the luxury of taking years off, because when you return, people will still remember your name. But in that infancy of creating whatever it happens to be, like a band, like a film company, you got to keep people talking, you got to keep the ball rolling on things. So there is a place for these movies, there absolutely is. It's kind of that weird, we are entering that weird patch of Disney films. We're not really so much into, well, I guess we are moving into the features, you know, Three Caballeros is a feature, and the ones that follow, Fun and Fancy Free and everything, but do you know what I mean? It's not Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or
even
Pinocchio.
Fun and Fancy Free, it's 3 segments, it's not an overarching big, oh my god, it's just 3 segments. It's kind of like House of Mouse. Like, House of Mouse, but think about it, it's good, and, you know, it was fun, it was a fun cartoon, but realistically, it's not really a thing, is it? It's just a load of cartoons stapled together with a little bit of plot in the middle so that Disney could go, here's a new cartoon that everyone's going to watch. So instead of, we're going to replay the same segment over and over and over again, we're going to slap a new name on it, put, you know, a minute or to, you know, 2 minutes in between each cartoon, and then everyone's going to pay full price again. It's the same sort of thing. I
think I said, by the way, I need to correct myself. I think earlier I said Mexico. It's not, sorry, it's Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, and Peru. I fucked up by saying Mexico. But yeah, I think it was a really small group as well, probably because the rest of his company were all revolting and, you know, rioted and things like, not rioting, but you know what I mean. I think it was like 20 composers and things like that, and artists and everything went out there. I mean, you see that in the film, that they're your live action segments, and I guess as a framing device it works for this kind of movie. It's good to see the actual artists out there and sketching things and seeing their imagination come to life, and you see them sketching karaoke with the cigar and everything like that. So,
and Pedro the Plane, and that
stuff's kind of cool. I like that. it's when you come hot off the heels though of stuff like, you know, Dumbo and Bambi, and you're used to what's come before, whereas granted Fantasia did have some of the live action segments, so I guess there you go, that's another comparison. You could argue that it's the merge of those two styles. It is very different, but I prepared myself for that because I kind of knew roughly what this film was going to be before I even watched it. But yeah, let's see what else we could talk. I guess we could talk more about the actual segments themselves then now. So, actually, there's a quote here from Film Historian. This is from Alfred Charles Richard Jr. commented that Saludos Amigos, quote, did more to cement a community of interest between peoples of the Americas in a few months than the State Department had in 50 years. That and that's an interesting thing that you mentioned earlier about this film. Well, it probably wouldn't be made now. Let's be honest, this wouldn't be made now. And even then, reading about it, there's one scene in particular that did get edited and did get changed in some way, and the scene was put back in, and then it was deleted again, and then it was released on a 70-something anniversary edition, and then it was deleted on Disney Plus, and then it was put back in. There's a scene apparently with Goofy smoking a cigarette, which was removed. Let's see which version it was edited. The segment was later edited for the film's Gold Classic Collection VHS and DVD release. It was then put back in. It was then deleted. It was put back in, as I said. But I think now, as it stands on Disney Plus, it's back in. I actually can't remember if I remember seeing Goofy smoking a cigarette, but I guess if this is the restored version, I think this is like off the 75th anniversary edition, I would assume, the DVD. It's probably in there, but it just goes to show. But I think the main thing is it's done with the intent of, you know, currying favor with Latin America, but also to change awareness and perceptions maybe in people of what Latin America's like. You know, at the time, I don't know, relations between the two might have been very strained. Certain people in America might have had a particular idea about them, or think that, oh, we're better than them, we're much more civilized than them, we have all these wonderful skyscrapers and this, and what do they have? So then seeing this film, it really opened their eyes to, oh, they're actually like on the same level as we are, like they're, you know, doing fantastically well. So that side of things is great, that it is raising awareness, but then I guess an argument could be made, is it a stereotype? You know, Goofy in a poncho, dressed as a what's it called, as a gucho or whatever it's called, the llamas and things like that, is that in itself a stereotype, could you
but
argue,
the idea
maybe?
was the comparison as well, between, because they had the comparison between you know, them and like the American cowboys in Texas. Like the idea was the comparison. And
Yeah.
the thing about stereotypes, which I absolutely hate, is when people find stereotypes kind of like offensive and all that. And it's like, the stereotypes do exist.
Yeah.
And without stereotypes, we wouldn't have things like, you know, Dutch braids, like where would they come from? You know what I mean? It comes from all of that. And if you can't look at that kind of stuff and wear a poncho or whatever, I mean, I went into a Turkish restaurant wearing a turban once, but that's just me. Like, you know, it's if you can't appreciate that kind of stuff, I just think that's I mean, a whole other matter, to be fair.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah.
The thing is with it's a stereotype. It's not. I feel like the whole movie is like a cultural learning thing as well. Like I say, like I do think if I'd watched it as a kid, it would be great, because you know the like the differences between obviously the American cowboys and all that. The actual comparison I thought was really good, and it was detailed, and it showed Goofy dressed as American cowboy, then suddenly dressed as the South American, and it was like, okay, and you actually saw the proper difference, and I think it did very well to just show you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with what you say about the stereotypes as well, because let's boil it down to like Britain, right? Someone who isn't aware of the culture, or you know, the things that you can do in London or whatever. If you, let's talk about London. Let's just say, right, we're gonna do a cartoon about London, sort of instructing people what it's like and what the people look like and some of the tourist destinations and things like that. You would have a red double-decker bus, you would have a phone box, probably you'd have Buckingham Palace, you'd have someone dressed as one of the royal guards in like the big hat and the red out, like you'd have all of that, right? You do all of the Big Ben, like everything that we might consider, oh yeah, stereotypical London, but that's what you do. That is what you do in many ways. And you know, you look at it and go, oh, Britain there's loads of fucking places and, regional accents and cultural this and cultural that in all different places. But fundamentally, you'd go for, London. And that's probably why, not saying everyone in America, but a lot of people, it seems that when they think of Britain, they just think, London, England. And that's it.
Yeah.
There's loads of other places and so many different things. And
the Beatles. But obviously, there's more music. But it's one thing, and you can't make a movie about every individual detail, and that's what I think a lot of these woke, idiots do these days. Where they'd look at that, if they were reviewing it, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, but there's so much more." It's like there is. Do you want to make a 19-hour movie? Because I don't. Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those things of just, you're gonna pick the top things. Like you say, you're gonna pick London, you're gonna pick this, and someone can't exactly turn around and go, "Oh yeah, but there's more to it than that." It's like there probably is. There's probably a lot more to it than that, but we're not going to make a 19-hour movie. We're going to make a 42-minute form of entertainment about this. That's what it is. Like it or leave it. And I feel like that's what, is not, I wouldn't say bad, but as, not great as the movie is, as much as it's one of those that is just slapped together, it also does very well at what it does.
Yeah. I'm just finding the name of the character because there's a really good comparison here. Oh god, what is the name of... The Ancient One, that's it. A good example of this whole stereotype thing gone nuts. Another Disney property, Marvel. When they were making Doctor Strange, and they were going to have the character, and you've read about this as well, they were going to have the character of the Ancient One, who in the movie is played by Tilda Swinton. In the comics, the Ancient One's a dude, and, he's... I don't know if he's Tibetan, or if he's Chinese, or I'm not sure, but he's your mystical old soothsayer kind of character, right? He is your Pai Mei. He's your Pai Mei from Kill Bill. He's your Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid. He's your Yoda from Empire Strikes Back. That kind of character, right? That kind of archetype.
Though, they do have I say little Asian guy, but the mystic looking guy that's sitting at a table drinking tea that you think is him at first.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate them doing that, but I just find it so ironic and funny that, the director was just like, yeah, but it's stereotypical. We can't do that. It's offensive, blah, 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 blah. But all he did by doing that, ironically, is make it offensive by going, so you took away the minority character and made them a white person.
Exactly.
It's so hilarious. Bad.
And you can read about it, like, they were tying themselves in knots completely. It was just like, oh no, we can't have like an old, wise Asian guy with like a Fu Manchu or like a beard or something because that's a stereotype. So why don't we go with like a female Asian soothsayer lady martial arts woman? And they were like, no, because that's kind of a stereotype as well, so we're not going to make them Asian. And it's like, okay, we'll have a mystical dude. It's like, oh no, but we feel like it should be a woman because we want to like do this, so let's get Tilda Swinton, who's like the whitest motherfucker out there, and let's have her. So yeah, you're treading by going, oh, this is offensive, or this is offensive, or we can't do this, or this is treading on this person's toes and walking on eggshells continually. You piss off more people than you would if you'd have just like cast whoever in the role, like get Ken Watanabe in there or something as the angel. Like that would have been cool.
I think they should have just got like Chris Tucker, and he should have just been like, oh, hello. Yeah. I think that would have just worked out so well. It would have covered everything, all the bases. Be like, it's fine. That you got a black guy, you got the stereotypical Asian accent. It's fine. Just go with it.
It's all. Everything. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Right. Let's talk about some of the segments then. Now, this is probably going to be really brief. So, segment number 1 is Lake Titicaca, and this is Donald Duck, and he visits there in Bolivia and Peru, meets some of the locals. He rides a llama at one point. Is this the one where he's like playing a flute and the flute directs the llama which way it needs to walk?
Yeah, and with the bridge that disappears, and then he rebuilds it, and
that was fun.
My favorite.
That was fun. Yeah. It's that proper kind of, oh god, can I say this, Looney Tunes kind of stage. Like it reminded me very much of that. Like I could see Donald Duck or like Bugs Bunny or Wile E. Coyote doing that or something. That was fun. And that's probably why it was my favorite segment, because it was informative, it was cool, and you get to see Donald Duck just do what Donald Duck does best. The next one's probably one of the most involved ones. It's Pedro, who's the anthropomorphic airplane, and I know you've mentioned about much later down the line Disney/Pixar projects that you believe were inspired. Watching Planes, exactly, yeah. The Cars spin-off they did, I don't know if it was a theatrical movie, if it was on Disney
I
Plus or a
never,
TV
I
show
never
or whatever
saw
it
it, but they definitely missed the trick if they didn't call one of them Pedro.
was. Yeah, oh, if he's like cameos in the background or something. But yeah, as soon as I saw that with like the eyes on the windows, I was like, I've seen something like this before. And at first I thought, going back to our childhood, do you remember a cartoon called Budgie the Helicopter?
I don't. Was he blue?
He was blue, yeah. And he had
I
like
can
they
see
had like
him,
the
but I don't
face.
remember it.
He was an anthropomorphic
Yeah.
helicopter. And in my head I was thinking, oh, that, and I was like, oh no, there was a Disney project with planes, and it was fucking Pixar's Planes. And then I think they did a sequel called Fire and Rescue or something like that. As I say, I can't remember if they were theatrical releases or not, if it was like a TV show on the Disney Channel or Disney Plus, whatever it was. But yeah, I wonder if they were inspired by this maybe. But I feel like I've seen this character somewhere, and in my head I don't know if I'm just thinking of Pixar's Planes, and that's why I think I've seen this character before. But I don't know if I've seen merchandise from this character. No, sorry?
That would be great if he needs a cameo in Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, if he was a summon?
Like that, yes. That should be a thing. We need more things like this where they, play tribute to these unknown things that you're like, what? And then people out there are going, I get it. But a lot of people are just thinking it's just a random plane.
I'd be
They
down
need
for
more
that.
things like that.
Yeah, like in Kingdom Hearts 3, I mean, I haven't played it yet. I've got it on my system, but you could summon a train at some point, right? It's like the Disney theme park ride train, isn't it? See, that should be Casey Jr. from Dumbo. Casey Jr., the fucking train the circus train should just come in and like fucking run over like 1,000 Heartless or something. It'd be great.
I don't know why they did that with the rides. It was a bit weird. I didn't love it, but
there was a lot of stuff going on screen at one point, and
I think what they did with that, to be fair, I think when it came to Kingdom Hearts 3, I think Disney had a big impact of, right, we want this, we want to promote this, which comes onto the Frozen world, which I'll talk about when we get to Frozen. But I think there was a lot of impact when it came to that, because the thing is, when you get a series, the more it goes on, the more impact certain things will have.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like Harry Potter when that started. Obviously J.K. Rowling had such a big voice on how the movies were done, but the more they went on, the more the people actually making the movies were like, okay, but we want this now. We want to do this. It's one of those things, really, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
which is sad, because weird things like Pedro the plane and everything will get forgotten because not many people know it. And I think it is kind of sad with the whole, because you think about House of Mouse, again, going back to that, how cool would it have been if you just saw Pedro the plane in there? Like, he doesn't need to be prominent. He doesn't need to be a big character. But I think he is, for me, he's the face of this movie, in the sense of Goofy is Goofy. He's just a Disney original. Pedro the plane is kind of he's unique to this, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Right, I've been hit by a wave of nostalgia, and go with me on this, because I'm trying to find the name of it, and I can't remember which company it was. I feel like it was some kind of like kids animation company or something. I remember, you know how you get like your logos at the beginning of a film, like DreamWorks or whatever it is.
Hanna-Barbera.
I don't know. I remember seeing a red cartoon plane that looks like Pedro, and he's like flying around the earth, and then he stops in the center, looks at the audience, and he like waves his like wing and then flies off. I'm seeing that somewhere, and that's going to drive me mad now, because I can see it. That was at the start of like a whole bunch of films.
The thing is, I don't know if that's a particular cartoon, only because have you ever watched Cuphead?
I know what you're referring to. I haven't watched it yet, but I know what it is.
Because there's a plane thing at the beginning, so I don't know if it probably started somewhere, but I don't know whether it's just a generic thing that started with cartoons years ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can't find. I'm typing in like red plane flying kids animation studio Earth. I can't find. That's going to drive me mad now. But I can see that in my mind. It was at the start of a bunch of films that I used to watch. So he's from Chile, and he's got to go and collect some airmail from Mendoza and return it, and he's like braving storms. Pretty much the conditions that we've got in the UK right now, actually. This is interesting, though, this cartoon, because there was a Chilean cartoonist who I think is quite popularly known over that way. Renny Rios Botiga. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but he goes by the name of Peppo. He was really disappointed with the character of Pedro, that he was just like this really incompetent plane and was terrible at his job, and he thought that it painted Chile in like a really bad way. So he took matters into his own hands and he created a cartoon character. I think it was like a comic strip character or comic.
Dorito.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Condorito,
Yeah.
who went on to become one of the most iconic comic book characters in Latin America. So, I mean, on the one hand, it's cool that this film, well, there's no other hand about it. Like, it's cool that this film, even though he viewed it negatively, spurred him on to create something of his own, which then blew up and took off massively. I mean, I don't know much about Condorito. I don't think I've heard that name. I don't think I've seen it. I did click and
It
like
looks
check
like a
out a
chicken.
picture. Yeah, yeah, it's a condor. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that's cool that, you know, in that part of the world, people probably know that, like we know Mickey and Donald, and like that's probably like as equally as big to them over there. So I mean, that's cool. It was an alright segment. The announcer was kind of funny. It was like, oh no, Pedro, what is he going to do now? Like, you need to fly higher, Pedro, fly higher. And it was this really
It was like one of those
voiceover.
radio segments back in the 40s.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what it was like. I did like it, and what I liked is how original it was. It wasn't using not old characters, but because the thing about Fantasia to me is Disney's. That's the movie. It's Mickey Mouse. It's this. It's that. Whereas, like when you get Three Caballeros and Saludos Amigos, it's I don't not that it doesn't have the right to use those characters. Obviously, it does, but it's kind of like it's not original. It doesn't feel like an original movie.
yeah.
And Pedro gave it that originality.
Yeah, I agree, and yeah, because when you see like Donald and Goofy, they're kind of glorified. What are they called? Silly symphonies kind of things, where it just has the Disney characters that you come to know anyway. So yeah, I mean this. Well, really, out of all of them, that was the only really original segment. I think. I guess really, if you view it in that way of creating a new character and a new situation and something that hasn't been done before. Because the next one that we're moving on to is El Gucho Goofy. And it's fine. There's some fun creative things they do. The bit where the horse is chasing him, and then he's riding the horse, and then the horse is riding it. The things like that, and he's like dancing with the horse. Like, it's fine. But this one went on for way too long. And I was this was where I was losing it. This was where I was checking the runtime and thinking, how much more of this is to go? Surely we must be at 42 minutes now. Come on. Oh, we're at 25. Oh, excellent. Love it. Yeah, it didn't need to go on this long. They could have cut it down a bit. It did feel a little bit egregious here. And, thinking about it, I'm like, what could I remove? Maybe some of the slapstick just went on too long. Maybe it went too much in depth about a topic that you could sum up in like 5 minutes.
That was just storytelling, kind of. This is the difference between American cowboys and blah. That was just storytelling bit, which, like you say, was fine. It was just after a while, like, okay, let's move things along now, guys.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just because I'm not a massive fan of Goofy, so that also probably didn't help. I don't know why I don't like Goofy so much. A lot of people love Goofy movie. I never watched that back in the day, and I feel like if I did, I would have so much more reverence for that character than I do. I only watched a Goofy movie maybe like 2 years ago. It was very, very recently that I watched it, and but yeah, I feel like I should say more about this. Like, what do you think of like the actual animation quality though? Because it's evidently not as detailed as something like one of their features, right? Like Snow White or Fantasia or something like that. But did you think it was just fine? It kind of reminded me of Dumbo.
Yeah.
That kind of like more simpler, not even quite as good as Dumbo, because there's not as much money behind it. But
I thought it was fine. It was there. It was good. I didn't think it was bad. I just thought it was very kind of okay. That was cool, but it didn't stand out. And where you're thinking this is good because of this, it was just that's good.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It was one of those of like I said. The thing is, the movie was I don't know how long it took to make, but I feel like it was very just put together. Of okay, let's put this out.
it was the same year as the same year as Bambi. It was released.
Oh yeah,
1942. Yeah.
so it was
God, sorry.
No, I was going to say It was just fine.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing. I don't. It's like a lot of this movie. There's nothing that blows me away. All these points of just saying like it does really well in this, it does really well else. It's one of those of when you really dissect the movie, but a lot of it is just fine. Like if I was a kid watching it, it would be a good kids movie. I'm not doubting that. I'm not saying it'd be bad, But what I am saying is, it would just be cool, done, and then you'd move on and probably never watch it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And then the final segment, again, not much to talk about this one, really. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation too. Aquarela do Brazil. That's awful. I apologize in advance. This introduces the character of Jose Carioca, as I mentioned, and he introduces Donald Duck to the samba. And you get like a bit of a musical number. There's like some fun energy with this one, and yeah, it's fine. It's a good finale one because you want to end on some kind of musical number. There is a little bit of a soundtrack, so like the original score was composed by a few people actually. You've got Edward H. Plum, Paul J. Smith, and Charles Walcott. And the title song Saludos Amigos was written by, Charles Walcott and Ned Washington. I think there was one song that was actually released much earlier, like a few years, by a band, and it never really took off, and then it was used in this movie, and then it kind of blew up a little bit more. Let me just have a look.
It's no Tarzan soundtrack, though, is it?
Oh, I know, yeah, wait till we get to that. Aquarela do Brazil was written and first performed in 1939, but it didn't achieve much initial success. However, after appearing in this film, it became an international hit, becoming the first Brazilian song to be played over 1 million times on American radio. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool little bit of trivia right there. But yeah, the songs aren't really memorable for me, and the fact that I can remember the Three Caballeros more, that's probably just nostalgia. That's probably just the fact that I actually watched this film as a kid, but even watching these films now, I can still kind of vaguely remember the tune of Three Caballeros from this, whereas I've already forgotten all the music from this film, really. So
yeah, I know it's one of them. I mean, to be fair, Three Caballeros, I know it, and I've not seen the movie. I just know the music.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's one of them that you just. I'm a firm believer, and I mean, I don't believe in spiritual witch stuff, but I'm a firm believer there are just certain things you just know. You may have never seen the movie, never heard the band, but you just know the song. It's kind of like, I mean, I'm going early in my comparison here, but like Jump, no one doesn't know Jump. Okay, no one doesn't know Van Halen's Jump, even if you've never listened to it before. You're just born knowing it. I do believe there are some things you're just born and you just know. That's it.
I feel spoiled. We've had 2 Van Halen references in this whole review, so you've outdone yourself with this one. I'll be interested to know what you do for Three Caballeros. Final thoughts on this movie then. To me, the most fascinating thing about this movie is the behind the scenes. It really is about how this whole idea was created. You had Nelson Rockefeller, and it was funded by the US government, and it feels like this super secret, covert international politics and political agenda against the Nazis. And it's really cool to read about. It is shameless propaganda. It is. That's fundamentally what it is. But you had a lot of that around the time, not just in Disney. Looney Tunes as well. There's a lot of propaganda. There's a hell of a lot of propaganda stuff in that, and various other animation companies too around that time. And it is fun to go back and watch some of those stuff. Like the old. Did you ever used to watch any of like the old Superman cartoons? I'm not talking about the ones in the 90s, like the ones before.
I don't know if I've ever watched the cartoons.
Let me. Is it? I want to say like Fleischer cartoons or something. Old Superman cartoon. I had a VHS back in the day.
All this stuff.
The 1940s animated series. That was it. Yeah, it came out around about the same time, 1941, 1942, and it was all Superman kills so many fucking people in that, and it's always like Superman taking on Japan or something, and there's like a Japanese cruise ship, and he just like fucking annihilates it. And of course, all the Japanese characters are all caricatured, as you would imagine at the time in 1941, and Superman's just fucking murdering everyone. It's Fleischer cartoon. That's it, Max Fleischer cartoon. I remember having a video on that. So stuff like that, it's very much of its time. It absolutely is. But I don't think this was made with like any ill will. Far from it. It was part of the goodwill policy. So there was a lot riding on this. Disney was probably just trying to expand more into Latin America, which it clearly achieved through this film and the subsequent film, Three Caballeros. So it did its job. It set out with a clear agenda of what it wanted to do, what it needed to be, and it achieved that, and it achieved the results that it wanted to, and potentially quelled any Latin American Nazi ties, maybe. It's fascinating to think about that, but As a film on its own, am I going to go back and watch this one anytime soon? Probably not. I literally just bought it for my collection. I'm glad I've watched it now, and there'll be a few, as I mentioned, in a couple of weeks, like Make My Music and Melody Time, that I have yet to see. But it's just a little bit of fluff, really. It's a little bit of like harmless fluff. That's how I'd review this film. But I am just
it's like
kind of,
when you pick out your belly button, you're like, it can stay. It's not going to kill me if it stays, but it's like that, really.
Exactly. There wasn't a Van Halen song called Harmless Fluff or anything, was there? We can't get a third one in there before the end. No.
That would be good.
But I am going to be clamouring for that Cinderella movie at number 12. Where it's like, right, now we're back.
I'm not, because I know what references you're going to use.
Oh, yes. I had totally forgot about, okay, that's going to happen. 6 weeks' time, my friend. 6 weeks' time. It's going to happen. It's going to take us home. Right. If you want to give your final thoughts on Saludos Amigos, and we'll round off after that.
It's the same. I'm not ever going to go back and watch it, probably ever in my life. The only time I would is if I had a kid and I wanted them to watch every day. Because if I had a kid, that's one thing I would do. They would watch every fucking Disney movie, and that would be one of them. It would just be a case of just watching them all. But other than that, it's not, because the thing is, it's not memorable. It kind of doesn't do anything for you in the sense of like Cinderella or Alice in Wonderland. They're great movies. This is just, again, it's the shorts, it's the segments, it's very okay, and if someone's going to watch it, they're going to watch it, cool. But if you're not missing anything aside from if you want to be a completionist and watch every Disney classic.
We are going to have to do a tier list at some point. It'd be interesting to see where this places. Because here's the thing, like, I don't hate this movie. I just don't really care for this movie. So because I don't, does that mean that it'd rank really, really low? I guess in terms of the... But then you might have, and I haven't seen this film, so I could be jumping to conclusions, but from what I've heard, when you get to like Chicken Little, which is worse, Chicken Little or this? Like Chicken Little's like an actual feature, and this is a lot shorter. This is like a featurette, like an anthology film. Well, I don't know. Which one would you rank worse? I guess we'll know when we eventually get there, but...
I don't think I've seen Chicken Little in full anyway, so...
Yeah, it's kind of a... This bulk of Disney films at the beginning, I mean, I haven't seen Three Caballeros in actual years. Make My Music, as I mentioned, I haven't seen. Fun and Fancy Free, I can remember that. Melody Time, I haven't seen. So I haven't seen like a good chunk of Disney films at the beginning. Then I've seen like a long stretch in the middle, and then there's like a whole portion of Disney films like Chicken Little, Meet the Robinsons, The Wild, Bolt that I haven't seen. So they're kind of like weirdly bookended at either side of that main run of Disney films, so it's going to be interesting when we get to them, and we will get to them. One thing that I really wanted to achieve with this review tonight, and I can thankfully say that we have, is that we've gone over the runtime of the actual film. I wondered if our review would be shorter than 42 minutes. We've currently clocked in at just coming up to 48 minutes, so that is an achievement, so I'm happy about that. But yeah, we'll round it off there. That was our review on Saludos Amigos, so join us next week at 8 p.m, the usual time, 8 p.m. GMT, every Monday, and we will be talking about The Three Caballeros. It'll be interesting to go back to that one. So thank you for everyone who's